Judy Garland, the beloved star of The Wizard of Oz, had a life that seemed like a fairy tale on the surface but was riddled with pain behind the scenes. Forced into show business as a child, she was subjected to a brutal Hollywood system that controlled every aspect of her life, including her body and mind. Studio executives gave her amphetamines to keep her energy up and barbiturates to make her sleep, unknowingly setting her on a tragic path of addiction. As the years went by, Garland struggled to maintain her career while battling substance abuse. Her dependence on pills and alcohol led to erratic behavior, financial instability, and multiple failed marriages. By the late 1960s, her health and career were in decline, and she found herself performing in small clubs just to make ends meet. Once one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood, she lost everything: her money, her career, and ultimately her life. In 1969, at just 47 years old, Judy Garland was found dead from an overdose of barbiturates. Her story remains one of Hollywood's most tragic cautionary tales, a reminder of the dark side of fame and the price of addiction. Montgomery Clift was one of Hollywood's most talented and handsome leading men, known for his intense performances in classics like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. However, behind his smoldering looks and undeniable talent lay a man tormented by personal demons and addiction. In 1956, Clift was in a horrific car accident that nearly took his life. His face was shattered, requiring extensive surgery, but no operation could restore the natural beauty that once made him a star. The physical pain was unbearable, but the emotional scars ran even deeper. To cope, Clift turned to alcohol and prescription painkillers, which led to a downward spiral of self-destruction. Once Hollywood's golden boy, Clift soon became unreliable, showing up to sets drunk and struggling to remember his lines. His career suffered as directors and studios hesitated to cast him. By the 1960s, he was a shadow of his former self, financially drained and battling severe health issues. In 1966, at just 45 years old, Clift was found dead in his apartment from a heart attack, likely brought on by years of addiction. His tragic decline is often referred to as the longest suicide in Hollywood history. Errol Flynn was the epitome of Hollywood charm, known for his swashbuckling roles in The Adventures of Robin Hood and Captain Blood. On screen, he was the dashing hero, but off-screen, his life was far from glamorous. Flynn lived a reckless, hedonistic lifestyle filled with alcohol, drugs, and scandal, an addiction to excess that would ultimately ruin him. Flynn was infamous for his wild parties, womanizing, and heavy drinking. His reliance on alcohol became so severe that he would often arrive on set intoxicated, struggling to remember his lines. His addiction affected not only his career, but also his health, causing rapid physical decline. Once one of Hollywood's highest-paid stars, Flynn squandered his fortune on lavish living and legal troubles, including multiple scandals that damaged his reputation. By the 1950s, Flynn was no longer the charming hero audiences adored. His career faded, and he found himself taking low-paying roles just to survive. His body, ravaged by years of alcohol and drug abuse, finally gave out. In 1959, at just 50 years old, Errol Flynn died of a heart attack, penniless and broken. His life remains a cautionary tale of how addiction can take down even the biggest of stars. Alma Rubens was a stunning and talented actress of the silent film era, captivating audiences with her beauty and grace in films like The Regeneration and The Firefly of France. But behind the scenes, she was fighting a losing battle with addiction, a struggle that would cost her everything. Rubens was introduced to morphine and cocaine in Hollywood's high society circles. What started as casual use quickly spiraled into full-blown addiction, affecting her performances and reputation. As her dependency worsened, she became unreliable, often missing film shoots or behaving erratically on set. Studios soon stopped offering her roles, leaving her financially and emotionally devastated. Desperate to fund her addiction, Rubens was arrested multiple times for drug possession. She attempted to get clean, but relapsed repeatedly. Once one of Hollywood's most sought-after actresses, she was now reduced to a tragic cautionary tale. By the late 1920s, she was penniless, unemployed, and struggling to find stability. In 1931, at just 33 years old, Alma Rubens succumbed to pneumonia, her body weakened by years of drug abuse. Her tragic downfall remains one of Hollywood's earliest and most heartbreaking stories of addiction destroying a promising career and life. Robert Mitchum was the ultimate Hollywood tough guy, known for his rugged charm and performances in classics like Out of the Past and The Night of the Hunter. But behind his cool demeanor was a man who flirted with danger, addiction, and self-destruction, almost losing everything in the process. Unlike many stars of his time, Mitchum's vices were no secret. He was a heavy drinker, a frequent user of marijuana, and had run-ins with the law. In 1948, at the height of his career, he was arrested for marijuana possession, a scandal that could have ended his Hollywood run. He spent time in jail, and while some stars never recovered from such controversies, Mitchum's bad boy image only seemed to enhance his appeal. Though he avoided complete ruin, addiction took its toll. His excessive drinking often affected his work and personal life, leading to erratic behavior and strained relationships. He remained in the industry for decades, but his career could have soared even higher had he not been battling his inner demons. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Mitchum lived to old age, passing away at 79. However, his story remains a reminder that even Hollywood's strongest can fall victim to addiction's grip. Humphrey Bogart, the legendary star of Casablanca and the Maltese Falcon, was the embodiment of cool, with his signature tough guy persona and gravelly voice. But behind the silver screen, he struggled with a lifelong addiction to alcohol, an addiction that would ultimately cost him his health and eventually his life. Bogart was known for his hard-drinking lifestyle, both on and off set. He was rarely seen without a glass of scotch in hand, and his excessive drinking became part of his identity. While alcohol never seemed to affect his performances, it took a toll on his personal life. His marriages suffered, and his health began to decline rapidly in his later years. Despite being at the peak of Hollywood success, Bogart couldn't escape the consequences of his addiction. Years of smoking and drinking led to esophageal cancer, but even as his body deteriorated, he refused to give up his vices. By the time he sought treatment, it was too late. In 1957, at just 57 years old, Bogart passed away, leaving behind a legacy of unforgettable performances and a cautionary tale of how addiction can claim even the most iconic stars. Bela Lugosi, forever immortalized as Dracula, was once one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces. His chilling performance in the 1931 horror classic made him a legend, but behind the scenes, he was battling a growing addiction that would ultimately ruin his career and life. Lugosi's downfall began with his dependence on morphine and methadone, which he started using to manage chronic pain from wartime injuries and years of physical strain. What began as medical treatment soon turned into full-blown addiction, leaving him unable to secure major roles. As Hollywood moved on, Lugosi was left behind, reduced to starring in low-budget films just to afford his next fix. By the 1950s, he was a shadow of his former self, frail, broke, and struggling to stay relevant. In 1955, he shocked the world by publicly admitting his addiction and checking into rehab, making him one of the first major stars to do so. While he managed to get clean, it was too late for a career comeback. In 1956, at 73, Lugosi died of a heart attack, buried in his famous Dracula cape. His story remains a tragic tale of how addiction can haunt even the most legendary figures. Marilyn Monroe was the ultimate Hollywood icon, an enchanting beauty who captivated audiences in films like Some Like It Hot and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. But behind the dazzling smile and platinum curls, she was a deeply troubled woman, battling addiction, loneliness, and the pressures of fame. Monroe struggled with insomnia, anxiety, and depression, relying heavily on prescription drugs, especially barbiturates and amphetamines, to function. Her addiction worsened as Hollywood's demands increased, and she often showed up late to sets, forgetful and disoriented. Directors grew frustrated with her erratic behavior, and studios began to see her as a liability rather than an asset. Despite her immense success, Monroe's personal life was in shambles. Failed marriages, constant scrutiny, and deep-seated insecurities drove her further into substance abuse. By 1962, her career was on the decline, and she had been fired from Something's Got to Give due to her unreliable behavior. On August 5, 1962, Monroe was found dead at just 36 years old from an overdose of sleeping pills. While some believe it was an accident and others suspect foul play, one thing is certain: addiction and the dark side of Hollywood played a major role in her tragic downfall. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was one of Hollywood's first true superstars. A beloved silent film comedian, he was as famous as Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, earning millions, and living a life of luxury. But behind the laughter, Arbuckle struggled with alcohol addiction, and one scandal would soon bring his entire world crashing down. In 1921, Arbuckle attended a wild party at a San Francisco hotel, where actress Virginia Rappe later fell seriously ill and died. Rumors spread that Arbuckle had assaulted her, leading to one of Hollywood's first major scandals. Though he was acquitted after 3 trials, the damage was done. His reputation was destroyed, and Hollywood blacklisted him, refusing to release any of his films. Devastated and unable to find work, Arbuckle turned to alcohol to cope with his fall from grace. He struggled for years, reduced to working under fake names to direct low-budget films. Just as he was starting to rebuild his career in 1933, signing a deal for a comeback, fate struck again. On June 29, 1933, at just 46 years old, Arbuckle died of a heart attack, penniless and broken. His story remains one of Hollywood's most tragic downfalls, fueled by scandal, addiction, and a ruthless industry that turned its back on him. Gene Tierney was one of the most breathtaking stars of Hollywood's golden age, mesmerizing audiences in classics like Laura and Leave Her to Heaven. But behind her flawless beauty and enchanting performances, she suffered from severe mental health struggles that led to a battle with addiction. Tierney's downward spiral began in the 1940s when she gave birth to a daughter with severe disabilities, caused by Tierney contracting rubella while pregnant. The emotional toll was unbearable, and she fell into deep depression. As her mental health worsened, she underwent shock therapy treatments, which left her memory damaged. To cope, she turned to alcohol and prescription pills, particularly barbiturates. By the 1950s, her addiction and mental instability led to erratic behavior, making it difficult for her to secure roles. Once one of Hollywood's brightest stars, she faded from the spotlight, spending time in psychiatric hospitals and struggling to regain control of her life. Unlike many of her contemporaries, Tierney eventually sought treatment and managed to recover, living a relatively quiet life away from Hollywood. Though she survived, her career never fully recovered, and her story remains a heartbreaking example of how addiction and mental illness nearly destroyed one of cinema's most radiant stars. Jean Eagles was a dazzling talent, best known for her mesmerizing performances on Broadway and in films like The Letter. She was one of the first actresses to successfully transition from silent films to talkies, but behind the glamour, she struggled with addiction, a battle that would ultimately claim her life. Eagles was known for her fiery personality and intense dedication to her craft, but the pressures of fame took a toll on her. To cope with stress, exhaustion, and the demanding nature of Hollywood, she turned to alcohol and drugs, particularly heroin and chloral hydrate. Her addictions soon spiraled out of control, affecting her performances and making her unreliable. As her behavior became more erratic, studios and theaters grew wary of working with her. She was suspended by the Actors' Equity Association and struggled to maintain steady work. Despite multiple attempts to regain control of her life, her body couldn't withstand the years of substance abuse. On October 3, 1929, at just 39 years old, Jean Eagles died of a heroin overdose, making her one of Hollywood's first high-profile addiction-related tragedies. Her story remains a cautionary tale of how fame, pressure, and addiction can destroy even the most promising careers. Richard Burton was one of the most gifted actors of his time, known for his deep, commanding voice and unforgettable performances in Cleopatra, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and The Robe. But despite his immense talent, he was equally famous for his self-destructive lifestyle, particularly his battle with alcoholism, which ultimately cost him everything. Burton's drinking problem started early in his career, but worsened as his fame grew. He was known for his excessive partying, often drinking heavily before and after filming. His tumultuous relationship with Elizabeth Taylor only fueled his addiction. Together, they were Hollywood's most glamorous yet volatile couple, often making headlines for their wild fights and extravagant spending. As Burton's addiction deepened, his health deteriorated, and his once brilliant career began to suffer. He lost out on major roles, and directors found him increasingly difficult to work with due to his unpredictable behavior. Though he attempted to get sober multiple times, he always relapsed. By the 1980s, Burton was a shell of his former self, his body weakened by years of alcohol abuse. In 1984, at just 58 years old, he died of a cerebral hemorrhage. His story remains a tragic reminder of how addiction can destroy even the greatest of talents. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.